Sure.
what we are already said, I'm going to edit out. Okay, so welcome to another Faithist Ministries YouTube video. This is our second attempt having Peter on. Peter is Faithist for a long time, and I'm very excited for him to tell his story and for everyone to have a chance to get to know him a little better. If you are a Faithist watching, I want to encourage you to stay and listen along, because this is how we're going to get to know each other. I met Peter on, I actually met Peter on the Universal Faithist of Cosmon conference call, but then on Facebook, we really connected a little bit better. So on the YouTube channel, we're really trying to collect Faithist stories so that we can share them with each other, Faithist to Faithist, and also let the world know what a Faithist is and who we are and how we live our lives as a Faithist using the Book of Oahspe to make that happen. All right, so Peter, I'm really glad to have you on. We have had some technical difficulties the first time around and today, but we are making it work, as you just said. So first off, I'm going to let you introduce yourself as a person, and then also tell me a little bit about your experience encountering Oahspe and Faithism sort of for the first time, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Right, and I think I was going to mention, because we talked about a little bit, the journey that led me from very early on to finding Oahspe, if you want me to go that far back. My name is Peter Harchins. I found the Oahspe at the end of 1975. Really, you could say 76, but I like to say 75. So if I figure out the math, it's easier to do it in fives. I had been looking for a long time. I think the thing that I find was important with my own journey is that I was never a Christian. My parents basically said, and using the word God as we understand it in Faithist, meaning the Creator, they just said, God's everywhere, live the Golden Rule and the Ten Commandments, and you got it. So I respect, the words of Jesus that's in the regular Bible and of Buddha and all the great teachers, but they were always individuals who were speaking a higher truth or from a higher light. And one of the things, even when I was young, was finding that what's the root of all these different religions, and for me it was really that simple thing. There's one uniting creative force, person, life, and the basic message as an ideal for me was like the Ten Commandments. If you do that, how can you hurt people? And if you love your neighbor as yourself, neighbor meaning everybody,
right?
You're not going to, unless you're indulging in masochism, want to hurt them.
Yeah. Well, I must say right off the bat, you had some pretty good parents to allow you to take that journey sort of on your own terms. That's quite an advantage.
Yeah, it really was. And it was strange. And the town that I grew up in was on the Jersey Shore between Long Branch and Asbury Park, and it was called Deal. And it was primarily Jewish, and at that point in time, primarily they were Reform Jews who, they weren't conservative, they weren't Orthodox. They, sort of that same thing. God, God's everywhere, live the Ten Commandments kind of thing. So I was in an atmosphere though I had friends who were Christian, that was comfortable with, or I should say I was comfortable in. And I remember from an early age walking into churches, particularly Catholic churches, and just literally being revolted by all the statuary.
Yeah.
And, praying to this saint and praying to that, which, from the Constantinian type of Christianity, was just a substitute of saints for the gods,
Right. Yeah.
So it just seemed very foreign and distasteful, actually.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable to be around.
Right. And then as I got to know more about, the world, and seeing that all these people who follow, and it's not just true for Christianity, but all these religions that say peace, don't go to war, can turn around and find a justification for going to war.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
To me, that was it was bewildering as a kid. I guess I still could say it's bewildering to some degree.
Well, it's like that mindset of I'm gonna love you even if it kills you.
Yeah.
Like
right.
what?
Yeah, and I'm going to, if I have to kill you if I can't save you, because that'll save you somehow. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it was like in my head, like, this doesn't make sense. And so this was kind of the beginning of my journey. And my parents, again, was very good. They were kind of on the bohemian side. And my mother's people were like artists and dressmakers. They were very creative. And what they pushed was just creativity and being a decent person. And my mother had been raised Catholic, and she found it revolting, and just left it way before she had me. And my father, I guess he just kind of lived what we're saying. He used the word Christian, but he hardly ever did any preaching or Christian or talk about Jesus.
Right. So before you go into how you found Owaspy, what did you look into as you were growing up, sort of in your formative years? Like, what kind of areas did your journey take you along?
Well, I think, with my Jewish friends going to temple, and like I said, it wasn't the really strict Orthodox or conservative, so it was, I could make a comparison. It was more like universalists, and kind of like Quakers, and just and I never believed in any proselytizing a religion, trying to sell anybody on anything. And part of Christianity to me was, it was almost like being salvation mugged.
Yeah, it feels like a mugging, doesn't it?
Yeah, like, do you know Jesus? I said, and I just said, yeah, I think I do. So, back off. Not that I said it quite that way, but that was, especially when I started hearing it's the only way to salvation. And so as I, kind of studied and then said, the good Buddhists, no, they won't get to heaven because it's only Jesus. And the Brahmins and all these other people, they're not going to make it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. It doesn't make sense. I mean, that's basically what it. This does not make any logical sense. And then as I got a little older, when the justification, really when it says in the Bible, do not kill, that means not murder, like shoot people and this and that. But I mean, if you have to go to war and kill bad people, I was like, oh, you know. And as I got older, I said, wait a minute. If when you say kill, murder, neutralize, ice, it's all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Why would a God who created life be so willing to endorse death?
Right.
Yeah.
And to people who are practicing religion, who are not, who basically have the same ideas at heart, and they're not doing anything violent, and they're doing good things. Excuse me, what's wrong here? You know?
Yeah. Math just doesn't work.
Oh, and so that was always kind of present, and my parents were well off, and so, but I was an only child, and it was a kind of town. You didn't even see people walking, you know, like walking around. You were like in the city, and you know, not even many cars. I mean, it was a Jersey Shore town, but it was like an island. You know, maybe it had 1,500 people, with these two big cities on either side. Not big cities, but Jersey Shore kind of cities.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of time to think. And my parents were very educated, and they talked about different cultures and different things. And when I was little or younger, I didn't fully appreciate how my father came about it. He's like, you know, his father was from Germany and mother was from Switzerland, but he knew all this information about Native Americans, different Native nations. He knew the names, he knew some of the practices, and so there was this reverence. And the concept I always had when I thought about God was the term the Great Spirit.
Right. And you don't know how he came across that information?
Well, he said he loved reading stories about Native Americans when he was a kid. And he would say his father spoke broken English. And his father used to hear, why are you reading all those Indiana stories? You know, he didn't say Indian.
Yeah.
So he had this reverence for Native peoples. And so it was felt. So I would say from an OASP point of view or spiritualist point of view, he probably was pulling and really getting in touch with that spirit of the ancient Native Americans that they talk about in OASP, who at this point in time are teaching us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like he was pretty inspired.
Right. And I found out later in life that he was a mystic and had belonged to one of these orders where you don't tell anybody until you're on your deathbed. You know, it was like.
Oh, wow.
Of course, as a kid, I didn't notice, you know.
Yeah.
The house we lived in also was haunted.
That would be interesting growing up.
So it was an interesting thing, and it was 3 stories, and I used to like go up in the 3rd floor. It was kind of like very simple. Wasn't, you know, at one point when the house was built for the people who ever built it in the 1890s, it was the servants' quarters, and and I didn't know I was meditating. I mean, at that point when I was really young, like 7, 8 years old, 6, 7,
Yeah.
and I would sit there, and it would be like, at the time I didn't understand it, but all of a sudden I'd hear Bible verses and verses about peace and love, and what I found later when I found the books, it was like Buddhist stuff, Christian stuff. All this thing was just like coming to me.
Wow.
And basically of living these 10 commandments and the golden rule. It was like, I don't want to say a voice, but an impression in my mind of information, you know?
Right.
And ever rarely gotten in a fight as a kid, and the times that I did, as soon as like maybe someone throws the first punch or this or that, was like, well, this is stupid, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I would just find a way out of it. It's like, oh, you know, um, this is, I don't want to do this. And then, as I said when we were talking before, I started having these experiences. At first I thought it was maybe about 5, but it probably was more like 6, 7 years old. At night, before I'd go to sleep, of being taken up on these big vessels, spaceships, if you will.
Yeah.
And it didn't, it wasn't about dead people, live people, spirits. It was just these were these people who were maintaining. Again, it's very hard to explain because it was more like a mind consciousness coming in, not an individual, a silent voice, but it was not the inner silent voice, but it was like a collective knowledge coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they were maintaining the universe for the unseen creator. And what really blew me away when I found Oasis, because it's talking about, these fire ships.
Yeah.
They're very big, and the great serpent as the solar phalanx.
Yep.
But these folks call themselves the Equorials, the Great Council of Equorials. And they were managing the great dragons, which was what they called the galaxies.
Interesting. That's pretty similar.
Yeah. I mean, and it was, their thing was how much this feeling of this immense harmony and lack of conflict.
On the ship.
On the ship, and their interactions, and this having this experience really lasted, let's say, from about 6 or 7 to about 12, to the time I was like 12 years old.
How frequently were you getting these visions, or?
Sometimes it was nightly. Wasn't long, but it was drilling into my head this concept of harmony, peace, and nonviolence.
Right.
And again, it's being dumbed down in ways I would understand it, like the captain of the ship concept had no problems peeling potatoes in the galley kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not better than you. This is just my job.
Gotcha. So not a big power struggle there.
No, it was this hormone. That was what it was. There was this feeling of this immense harmony and unity, and it's very hard. I still can't really, in part, expressing the flow of that.
That would be pretty cool to experience, though, especially as a child.
I felt very safe there, and I remember one time near the end of this experience when I said, "Oh, this is just wonderful. How can we're all in this chaos, and how can I, just as a person, have that kind of not only harmony but tranquility?"
Mm-hmm.
And the collective idea or voice, if you will, said, "You too will be like us." Now, when I was younger, I took that as, more self-centered, just talking to me. As I grew and understood the connectiveness of things,
yeah,
that it was not just me. That you meant us.
Right. Well,
almost sapien.
You couldn't be like them by yourself. That's kind of the point, right?
No, the point, as a kid, at 8, 9, 10, coming up on 12, it was more like me. Oh yeah, but as I matured, I understood. No, it's like talking to it's us. It's saying you human beings. And I'm putting it in my own words. No matter how screwed up you are right now, somewhere in time and space, you'll be doing the same stuff that we're doing, and you'll be like us.
So they're talking to you as the representative of humanity, then.
Yeah, giving me the concept, and I'm sure they knew that as I matured, I would understand that it wasn't about Peter Hartson,
Right.
But it never, the memory of that just never went away,
That's
and
pretty amazing.
And again, in that house, there was, it could have been a portal to something. Who knows? I honestly don't know. All I know is that I could always feel things. And then on the more material side, or getting to the more earthly part of that vibe, there was some scary too. Like there was some like negative forces that always seemed to be wanting to grab hold of me and turn me.
Really?
Yeah.
You felt like there was a battle for you in that house, good and evil trying to influence you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into like the horror movie sci-fi kind of thing, but the maybe even testing to see how strong I'm in my belief,
Yeah.
And also realizing that one of the things that moved me to this was realizing, and I was again in my own reality, how really cruel and vicious people can be, thoughts, whatever. And I think that was part of it, the realizing a lot of the philosophers like Aristotle had said that, and as I later said this, as I later found out, was human beings can be more bestial than the beasts and be more angelic than the angels. You got to choose basically which direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential inside of us on either side of that one.
Right, for either side, to default and for power and glory and the enjoyment of hurting, or the enjoyment of healing, helping, and serving the needs of others instead of wanting to rule. So it was very clear from an early age for me that one has to really be dedicated. If you say you believe something of these scriptures that people talk are the best way to live, then you got to live it. You don't talk it.
Right.
I mean, you talk it, but there's no point in the talking unless you really going to live it, and that might mean a lot of times of eating crow, being humble when you would like to tell them off, and learning to trust the process.
Yeah,
now,
my wife and I just read a section in God's book of God's Word, where it basically said the same thing, where if your actions don't match up with your words, you're going to be surrounded by fire on the other side. It's not
right. And here too, because you're going to draw not from what you preach, you're going to draw to you what you act.
Right.
That's where the magnetic connection comes for the most part. So you say, oh, I really believe this, but today I'm going to go beat Tommy's ass. Well, there's a whole bunch of folks in the unseen that say, oh, we're going to party.
Yeah.
We're going to get down on this fool.
Put your hooks into that guy.
Yeah.
Get attached.
So, and I want to mention here, I was born with a handicap. I I am classified legally blind. And I want to make this clear. That's a classification. I see, and I see very well to get around. So nobody ever even thought I had an eye problem.
Hmm.
And
Until
they didn't.
how old were you starting to try and read, and they noticed a problem, or what?
Uh, well, it was the days of progressive education. Also, my parents were very learned, and I learned by just, and they didn't say, "Oh, this is not a discussion." I would hear them talk about all things:
Mm-hmm.
philosophy, religion, politics, behavior, sex, all the stuff in a way that was like how you would learn it in a pre-literate civilization.
Yeah, so you had like an oral tradition in your own home.
Right. So, and think about this. If this stuff, and I'm going to have to say it because you can't prove this stuff, it was truly coming to me. It was coming to me because I had the spiritual ears for the oral teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You see
Yeah,
what I
it
mean?
sounds like it was custom made for you. Your path started out custom for that
Right.
that bend.
The reason that this handicap came was one. I was a 10-month baby, but they didn't know how to regulate the oxygen back then. So from what I learned, if you get too much oxygen, you go blind. If you don't get enough, you get, like I got, different degrees of visually screw up, and probably other parts of the brain too. I don't think it's like, oh, because I have trouble with math and some things. It's just and hand-to-eye coordination stuff.
Hmm.
But it also caused me to go inward.
Yeah.
And when I was born, I was a blue baby. I had the cord around my neck being choked. And I was 10 days in the oxygen tent going back and forth, which I think also probably has an effect as far as the connection with what we would call the spirit world.
Right.
I
Yeah, it
mean,
could have enhanced it because you had maybe your connection with your body was rewired a little bit, so enhanced your
right.
ability to have a spiritual connection.
So it was like, I'm being prompt. I didn't. So let's put it this way: I wasn't going to be, oh, listen, I want to really hear God. I want to find this. It was just, this is just what was going on. I mean, it wasn't something I was asking for, or wasn't asking for at that point. And my parents had all kinds of different books on different cultures, and even along with stuff about Native Americans, about Africa, this and that. But most of it wasn't the typical kind of things that they played the Africans that they showed pictures of kings and rulers and all this kind of thing. So I got a very different picture of the world than a lot of people did around me.
So let's fast forward a little bit to you said 75, 76 is when you.
Yeah.
What were the circumstances for how did a WASPy actually come into your physical possession? Because every faithist has a very unique story for that.
Well, and that's what I say. This is a story because even back then, I wanted to prove this thing of this oneness is not, these religions fighting each other doesn't make any sense. So,
yeah.
I had gotten married. Also, and for me, this important part of my story is at between 9 and 10 years old, I had visions of who I was going to marry and how long the marriage would be. And the person I was going to marry was going to be an African American woman who I did marry. The marriage lasted for 5 years, which was the prediction. Mm-hmm. But we stayed a family. And she also had Native American, Nanacoke on her father's side, and totally Cherokee on her mother's side. and we were always stayed tight. And she was very mystical in her own way. So all these kind of things played in. So we had the divorce. I also had my crash into the bad stuff, and got myself together, and then set out to find the books that would verify all the stuff I heard in my head. And so I started studying Buddhism, studied Mormonism, studied Hinduism. And to me, when I saw the books, it was like relearning what I heard in my head, but more intensely detailed. You see what I'm saying? So I was looking for this book, this one book that I could show, because I didn't have really a lot of confidence in myself, because they didn't find I had the eye trouble until I was in 4th grade, because it was progressive education, and I knew how to answer. I would answer correctly, but I would screw the test up, and, oh, he's lazy, well, he'll learn when he, all this kind of crap. And then in 4th grade, I had this teacher who was old school, and she said, no, this kid's not slow, he's not stupid, he knows things, he can't see correctly. And I honestly really didn't learn how to read it was between 16 and 18, and I really got to be able to read.
Wow.
So I wanted to find a book that would literally show in their examples how all the great lawgivers in the different religions said the same thing initially, and it got screwed up after. And so I was on the search for that. Then I got into the Kabbalistic stuff, the Hebrew Kabbalah, and Hermetic science. And in these books, it was always about, again, the one infinite creator above all this stuff and within all this stuff. And so, like I said, I was looking for this. My wife and I had joint custody, and I had the kids. I was raising the kids at that time, and in a town near where my parents' town was, right next door, Long Branch, New Jersey. I was searching for this stuff. I was, reading stuff, and I was looking again for this book. So there was this guy. His name was Laird Bussey. He called himself Sadhu. Very bright guy, but screwed up. Kind of a messed up guy. Been in Vietnam. He got his buddies all blew up, and he, did a lot of acid. And he was very spiritual, but he had the dark end of the light with him. So anyway, I never really mentioned too much of what I was looking for. So one morning, I'm at my desk, and he usually come early in the morning, and he comes and he puts this book, and it was the Wing Anderson Blue OWASP, on my desk, and he says, I think you've been looking for this. Or this is the book which you've been looking for. And I'm like, what? Wow. So I start reading it, and I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, I get into, the Book of Jehovah. Oh, also what struck me, the most important thing initially was the OWASP statement in OWASP, where it says, this, no book, this book got it all, and it's not, immaculate. It's got, it's here for you to go above it,
Right.
And
use your brain, think about it.
Yeah, basically, this is a guide. This is an introduction to understand, have a greater understanding of how things work, basically. But then I get to that part where it talks about the little white people and yellow people and the black and brown druk people. Well, I was at that point. I picked the book up. I was ready to throw it across the room. And if you can imagine what was going on in my own head, because most of my mentors were African American or part Indian or Indian and white. Yeah, and so I was like, okay, this is not part of where I want to be.
Right.
And so reading the Book of Jehovah, the Book of Seth Antes, I now, I'm up in seventh heaven, brother, and then I
Yeah.
read the other one, and that's like crashing. I said, oh, because I had gotten into speed and stuff. This is like speed, man. You get up and then you crash, I don't like that. So I literally I was in the act of throwing the book across the room. I felt this hand on, and I was already getting visions and taught how to kind of do stuff like that by the people who had mentored me, who also, even in the drug culture that I fell in, talked about the Great Spirit and communes and going out of your body and all this other thing. So I was already open to this information. And I feel this hand on my shoulder. And I turn around, and there's all this light behind me, and I can, and most clear in the light, because I could feel these others with this person, is this spirit, this black angel in this white light, in this robe with this big afro, and I couldn't tell if it was male or female. It was very androgynous. I think it may have been female. And he or she said, read on, you're a scholar. I said, but I don't want to read on. This is bull. And said, read on, so I did. And, got other pictures coming through from spirit that were showing a bigger vista there of what all was being said in that part. And, but yeah, that was my introduction to the OSP. Then I found that this guy who brought the book to me had stole it from a friend of mine across the street.
He had a stolen copy.
Got a stolen copy, so I called the guy up and I said, look, man, I got this book. He knew who this guy was. I said, Laird brought this thing over. I found out, that's your book. Do you want it back? He said, no, I wasn't interested in it. You keep it.
Oh, great.
So, go ahead.
I said that's great. I mean, Too bad for him. He missed out, but good for you.
Yeah, he just had no interest. And I'm like, okay. And so, like, I followed the instruction of this entity. And like I said, I sensed that this being, it was like I could kind of get a sense that it wasn't just this one being. It was like they were, he was the focal point, for the group that she was with.
Right.
And so I just read it and was like, oh, wow, this is what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just got into studying it. Now, it was interesting. Remember I said I have this eye problem, so it's very difficult most of the time to read for any long time, and it hurts. And I remember I'd already read, well, for me, I had been, hooked up with the Commission for the Blind and all that stuff. So I had played the whole New and Old Testament on record, talking books from the Library of Congress, Library for the Blind, and amazingly, through different parts in the regular Bible, I would get headaches with stuff that just didn't make sense. But I mean, literally get a headache. When I read the OSP, and that was just that anger burst in the thing. I never got really a headache or these feelings of wrong, And I was able to read for longer periods of time.
That's awesome.
And I said, whoa, this,
Something special. You know, it's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but
Well, I no. But you know what I thought? Instead of being special, this is going to mean work, brother.
what's that?
This is going to mean work.
Oh,
This now you got the book. Now you got to show it to people and try to prove this thing without pushing people.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's a tricky proposition.
Right.
So what I was going to say is, shortly after my wife and I got the book, we realized that when we pray with the book a waspy open and like our hands on the pages, it's like it's not normal prayer. I'll just say that much.
No. There is something profound, and I think one of the things for me was very important. Since it's a strange dichotomy. I mean, I respect books, knowledge, but since I learned basically orally and the deepest truths up until I found the philosophy from people who passed it down verbally to me, either in spirit or spirit, mind, or physically, who were my mentors, because I was like the baby of the group, these folks. And a lot of them, the people I had come to know in New York, and before my marriage and during my marriage, it turned out most of them, and I didn't know that about the mystical part with my father, most of them had parents or grandparents who were either medicine people or traditionists or mystics in different disciplines.
Really?
And we were all brought together, and we stayed a family. The people who are still alive in the flesh, we are still this expanded family.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, though everybody's spread out now, or in the spirit world, and they do come in and kind of show up once in a while, so there was like this, and then it's like, okay, now I had like I said, the Wing Anderson book, and so I said, okay, he's talking about all this collectiveness, which was also what we talked about with the people I knew about how to build communes, and it was always about, no one was talking about God on the throne. They always were talking about the Great Spirit, the creative energy, the life of the universe, which was right where I was at anyway. Even when we were doing, stuff that wasn't the best thing for us, but it was like always like, and when I came to these people, when I was like at the period when I was copping and stuff, and I'm just, I'm trying to, the negative thing of breaking up in a marriage, I'm just trying to get high. And I said, look, I want to hear this. Because they stop laughing or joking, and they start teaching me this stuff. And I'm saying, look, I'm just trying to get high. And they said, oh, this is really high, man. Shut up and listen.
Yeah.
So, again, being introduced to that collective community concept of Owaspy was an ongoing stuff with my group, even in my marriage and the people we knew, who we also kept, in spite of the marriage, kept the family and just added this extended family to things.
That's pretty cool. Like that's what I'm definitely interested in developing, and for only being a year into it, my wife and I are definitely getting more connections than we thought were available, which is great. But it'd be nice to.
Well, once I got on the internet, which was very, very late, like within last year or two of really getting on it, the people that you've met through on the UFK thing. I mean, we're old and we're like, well, we got to find some young people, man, because we're gonna be gone,
Right.
And then I felt like Rip Van Winkle, and I'm like, holy crap, there's all these people talking about Owaspy on Facebook. Where have I been?
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, it blew my mind, man. I was like, so anyway, going back to, I got the blue Owaspy. I'm like, okay, how do I find people? Okay,
Yeah.
what do I do now?
How
So,
do you find people there, Peter?
yeah,
Give me some advice on that.
well, here's what happened. And some of this, I'm not sure exactly how I found UFK really, but what happened is I had the blue OWASP. It talks about um, the scenes of Cosman, and they were located. In the book it's Montrose, Colorado, the address. So I see it, and remember, even though I don't believe in Christianity, we live in a Christian society. So the whole tale of the rapture being taken up, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how do you find people? So I wrote to Montrose, right?
Uh-huh.
Figuring these people were still there. I get back, no longer at this address. Now, my social conditioning was, oh my God, they were already taken up in the rapture.
Oh man, missed the boat.
Missed the boat, Taunt, oh my God. So I guess what I did, because remember, I got the eye problem. I'm not really, how do you find people? I don't know, I mean, in those days, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And all I remember somehow I found, and it is a blank. I don't remember how I would, because I didn't know who to contact. I mean, other than these people.
Right.
And then somehow something, I just don't know. I don't remember anymore. I just remember that I learned about UFK, and like I said, I don't.
So how long have you been in contact with, and for anybody watching, UFK stands for Universal Faithists of Cosmos.
Faithist of Cosmos. Well, I've been part of that. I would thinking about what the time say. For let's say 75, end of 75, I find the book.
Yeah.
I'm reading it, so I'm into it in 76. I would say I found, however I found them, which is strange. I have no memory of that step.
Hmm.
Um, I found them probably, I would say, 78, 79, got in touch and became involved with them. Now, UFK itself, I believe, started way, Joan does uh, uh, lectures on that, I believe in the 50s.
Okay.
Now, Joan is like 91 years old, and she's had it since she was in her 20s.
Yeah, and Joy grew up with it. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine being born into a Faithist home. That would be really interesting.
Um, yeah, and her father was a faith. It was her father who had the vision of his grandmother coming to him in a dream, telling him that the Owaspy, she had the Owaspy, and told him in a dream where to find it in the trunks in the house.
Wow. How come
Oh,
they didn't tell me that story? I don't think they told me that story. I don't know. I don't remember it.
well, you know, like, you were having trouble with the connections and all, but yeah, she's gone over that story, and then they met each other, and
Yeah.
he introduced um, her to the Owaspy, and I think, and I got to remember, I might be in the telling, I think, it was like, I really, really love you, I really want to marry you kind of thing, but I am dedicated to this,
Mhm.
Joan read it, and it was, yeah, this is it,
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty cool story.
and
Yep.
then through, that hookup, you know, people met each other, and so I became part of that, and because at that point it was mostly Caucasian people, and my connection with black, basically the way I was raised up. Well, this is important I think for me as far as who I am or became or was molded into. My parents always told me I had everybody in me, which to me was I can't be white. Okay, meaning
Right.
how most people look about what the concept of white. My mother, who's Italian, but Northern Italian, but very light skinned, very light, look more got more French and German. But when she was a kid, um, and she'd come home from school, and her parents were pretty wealthy. When she came home from school, the kids, people would make fun of her and call her a guinea hen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And my father and his twin sister, fraternal sister, blonde-haired, blue eyes, very, Nordic Aryan looking. Their other sister, Lily, had black curly hair, suavier complexion, fuller features, and when she was little, or when they were young, and she went to the beach and they weren't with her, they wouldn't let her on the beach because they thought she was black.
Oh, wow. She really was dark.
Right. So the point being is, I'm like, well, wait a minute. All this isn't, this ain't making sense about, all the racism shit. So I didn't grow up around it, but I heard it from people. We're inducted in the system. So I was interested. Boy, I really would like to find if there's people of fuller color who are into the OSB. Then I found Glenn and his group, the Restoration Faithists, the old head of Jean Lee, at that time was the president of UFK. She had found out about the Restoration Faithists, and I found out about them, and they were in New York. Like I said, I was at that first point in time living in New Jersey, but only 50 miles from New York. So I hooked up with them and became part of the Restoration Faithists, who are mostly African American, and one of them is married to a Filipino lady. And we do work more of spirit cleansing, not just like individuals, but working with the concept of being anchors for the angels to do work to clear the lower atmosphere. Not always the safest kind of work.
What kind of, I'm curious because I actually have been wanting to ask you or Joan about this. What kind of experiences have you guys had working for healings, like with the angels or however you guys do it? I mean,
well, it's a twofold thing. The stuff we started out just doing cleansing to help for healing. I'll start off safe, but then it became, as we learned, and part of who we learned from was a lady named Gwen Walton, who was a Faithist priestess in the English Faithist Church, Cosman Church. Been around since I think the 1890s, and she was of Afro-Caribbean. She was from Guyana, but black and some Indian and so forth, and very knowledgeable. And the person who ordained us, Cora Bennett, she had been doing that spirit work, and she had wrote a whole thing about spirit rescue work, which we were studying. And so we started, it wasn't just like, oh, let's just do this. It's a whole protocol and the understanding of if you're trying to cleanse people, there are forces that don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not just the level that you see in the spiritualist church where they're just basically working with higher first resurrection to get one or two spirits off. We're talking about collective work to do collective clearing.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
What would be an example or a story of like a healing that you were a part of that you are able to witness, just to give people an example?
Well, what we do, it's hard to explain, but we'll come together and we work for the most part, collectively. It's not like I'm going to do it by myself.
Right. Yeah, the group.
And so we'll meditate. We'll try to get and always go to the Creator first for the light. It's not, oh, we go to the angels first. No, you go to the Creator. You ask permission. You meditate yourself. You do work on cleaning your own stuff up. Initially, so you can be a better vessel, and then we'll sit, and we don't have to be there. Back then, we could be. We came together once a week, and we could do a lot together physically, which was really good, and have ceremony. And so we would do the initial appraisal period. See, it's not like let's jump in. It's like let's all of us seeing what we get when we meditate on the situation. And sometimes we get exactly the same thing, but mostly everybody's seeing different angles, but it's the same situation. So like what's in the folds of people's auras and so forth. Mm-hmm. So again, that collective work. And there is something in OASP, and I forget what section it is. I'm very good remembering the kernel, but not the details of where stuff is for the most part. Yeah. Other than it's in the book, but it talks about the ideal situation is if you have like 10 people who work on one person to help them. Mm-hmm. That way you do a collective work of really building for the angels to build up in energy. So in one sense, they really do the work. We provide the anchorage because the higher angels, from best I can understand over the years, it's harder for them to penetrate into the darkness. Hooking up with us, they're able to see into the dark places clearer.
Yeah, and doesn't it say that the angels are limited by the faith of the people they're working with? Like,
well, that too. I mean, in many different ways. I mean, as to guardianship, you in the Book of Wars against Jehovah.
Yes, that's where it is.
It's very clear that at least as the first and maybe second onslaught of the bad guys. The faith of their wards helps them. And this is an important point from my understanding, David. Yes, we can claim and should claim, not just ask for protection, and we can claim it. We will get protection. But the weakness of that protection, from my best understanding, comes from our degree of faith and our degree of doubt or maybeism. You see what I'm saying?
Or what about our Tetracts that haven't been dealt with or something like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Tetracts to me is, as I studied OASP, I understand that from the mortal, evolving, embryonic place we are, the first thing is not dealing so much with the drudges and the bad angels. Yes, it's united, but the more we get over are able to recognize, and as much as we can overcome while in the flesh, are Tetracts. Because the Tetracts, I picture it like this. Picture as if your body's like Manhattan Island, right?
Yeah.
And at the bottom of, or throughout Manhattan, different parts on the island, you got boat docks for ships, right?
Right.
But the Tetracts are or another way to call our Tetracts are 7 negative personality faults or negativities.
Right.
And as long as we have them, the dark forces can easily purchase entry into us and influence us.
Yeah, they're like doorways.
Yeah, doorways, ports of call.
Mm-hmm.
So being aware of our tetracts, and again, I'm not sure who everybody who may or may not hear these things, but I'm going to read a quick description, and of course, there's ancient words being used for them. So I'm just going to give a short rendering of the seven, if I may. So
Yeah,
they are anash, which is persistent stubbornness by word or thought, and the delight in destruction. Now, this is important. We understand, well, if you're what's the difference between steadfast and stubborn? Now, the key here is, which is persistent stubbornness by word or thought, and the delight in destruction. So even with entertaining a self-destructive thought, you see what I'm saying? Like we get addicted to our moods, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the harder to let go, then whatever's around it can easily thought form, so forth, build it up, and there's a thing called larvae, which is the emotional equivalent of a thought form. So if I'm sad and it's something that comes back from my past that makes me sad, every time I think about it, I am building up the emotional sadness about it.
Yeah.
And vice versa with the good side. Okay? So let me go to the next one. And again, this is my best understanding. I'm not saying, everybody got to think and understand and investigate for oneself. But getting as much knowledge as possible and is important. So then the next one is Zimma. Wicked devices, negating every good thing by holding it up to ridicule. It is the joking evil. So to be clear, this does not mean being humorous or even making positive humor about the Creator and so forth, like you would joking around with your father or your mother. But we're talking about people who will try to belittle every good, positive thing and make fun of it, so they don't have
mocking or deride. It's like derision,
Yeah, making fun of someone who's handicapped in a mean way, not in a, like everybody's with it kind of thing, meaning the person who's handicapped, because I used to joke about my own, but it was like I'd use it as a defense and a way to build myself up more than knock myself down. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So that joking evil, and we've seen it in politics too, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is Ra, is the delight in being bad, the flesh evil. And I imagine that probably means lust in the sense is like, okay, I got my girlfriend, man, but it's cool, man. I'm just gonna go over here and talk to Sally. We're gonna get something on for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing, and all kinds of things, gambling, stuff that the material flesh, satisfying the flesh at the cost of the spirit. Then there's Bila Ayel, is worthlessness, inertia. And I think here there's several things. Inertia is also laziness, or that famous word, which I know I got, procrastination.
Yeah.
Putting things off. And even feeling, if we start feeling, well, I'm worthless, I'm not good, all of a sudden what we're doing is disarming our ability to be.
Mm-hmm.
To be all that we can be. So these are all very important. Then avan, or even, vanity and self-conceit, which, we could say prideful, that, or false pride, however you want to say that. And so we all have to do that, because let's say someone's really living is on the right path, right?
Mhm.
But even being on the right path, to quote a friend of mine's statement, but they think they're uh, all that in a bag of chips. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have noticed that. I don't mean to pick on Faithists, but I have noticed that some Faithists are really, really a little. It feels a little prideful. They're a little too excited about it.
Oh, well, yeah. See, look, overcoming the self, as
It's not
in
easy.
our, it's not easy, and we're not even aware most. That's why this overcoming the tetracts. The first thing is really being, well, going back to the old statement,
Hmm.
know thyself.
Yeah.
Understand thyself. Understand these mechanics, because the tetracts are part of us. They are part of the Asu animal entity that we are, as well as a spiritual one. And it's our
Hmm.
spiritual one that's developing, and our ethical spiritual one, which means that we have to work harder, because the Asu self, in that sense, is the mother of our spirit.
Right. Yeah. These tetracts are well established in our physical
Right. And they
bodies.
are, yeah, they're part of us. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get rid of them in the sense of rid, because one of the most important things, the angels, the lords and gods in Owaski who fell from their place in the second resurrection was because of their own tetract had not been pacified or dealt with or faced enough.
Hmm.
It's only in the third resurrection you never hear of anyone defaulting. And there's a statement in Owaski that makes it very clear that those in the third resurrection are all of Etherian grades,
Yeah.
which now I think the lowest grade mention of Iesus is 95. So I would say they would, to be in the third resurrection, I would say estimately from 90 to 99. Okay?
Hmm.
So if you're below that, you still got enough of that stuff when darkness comes in
Yeah.
the spiritual darkness in the lower heavens to go, well, I think I could do this better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
You
let me,
might listen.
yeah, because, well, look at Luanamark, the false Christ. Um,
Hmm.
he didn't break away because he wanted to be a bad guy. He was saying, oh, the peace thing of the God of the planet is okay in peacetime, but look at, and he, I'm not saying he didn't do it there wasn't ego involved, but the point of what he's saying is, I'm seeing all this suffering, and this God Baal and Asherah, these folks are doing terrible things. We got to do something.
Right. He did seem like he
It's
had good
like,
intentions.
yeah, it's like going in, oh, we got to do, we got to go in and we got to go to war and go into, we got to get Bedlam, we got to get these people for the bad kind of thing.
Mhm.
So he and his three buddies, they're like, no, I can't, and in a way, oversensitivity. I can't see how they're suffering. We got to do it. This doesn't work. We got to do a bolder thing to stop these fools.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happens, old Teddy Tetract goes, ooh, yeah,
Wake
listen to
up.
me.
Here we go.
Right. But I'm saying, so they started off with good intentions. And David, you remember the old stuff, right? With good intentions, the old saying.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
good intentions lead to good intentions lead to the road of hell. If you can have all the good intentions in the world, But if you don't have your act together and understand the consequences of things and what needs to be done, it's great. Have the intention, but it's going to blow up in your face.
Yep.
So we all got this work. To me, it's like, look, man, you know, this is a job. This is what you know. This is like, we ain't something special. We found the book, and the angels are saying, if we looking at us, saying, are you going to really get this, or are you going to play it?
Mm-hmm.
You know. So anyway, we had vanity and self-conceit. Then we have dibah, love of slander, and the reporting of evils, the enticing of evil. Now, I've gotten in discussions with folks, and they say, well, does that mean, you know, something's going wrong? Do you tell someone? And my answer usually is, you know, that thing is, oh, you know, just don't say nothing. You know, just be silent. None of my business, or I'm not going to tattle on people. They're talking about, look, if you know someone's going to murder somebody, you need to do what you can to prevent it. If you're going to sit there and gossip and put everybody down and try to find bad about them, because and you're not going to do anything about helping them get better, that's what they're talking about, you know?
Right. It's talking about your reports are evil, not reporting evil.
Right. The way you report it and what you're doing it for. Look, when I was a substance abuse counselor working in the Bronx with recovering female addicts and their children, we had to, our job was to deal with their faults to turn them around. We had to know what their weaknesses are. And we had to, well, we go to them and say, they've signed to come in the program and, in a sense, be taught how to reform themselves.
Right.
And so, yeah, we've got to be, and we've got to be suspicious because they're drug addicts. You know, they're going to do a lot of stuff to harm themselves. So we have to stay on top of them. But the ain't what you do, but the way what you do it.
Right.
And the purpose was to get them together so they could function better and could take care of their children together better.
Mm-hmm.
As parents, not because we wanted to make them feel bad, but
right.
yes, we
did help them.
Yeah, we did have to sometimes make them feel real bad about their attitude and their behavior.
But it's not slander, you know.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like, look, you see what you're doing? How is this going to help your child? And in this program, it was a 2-year program they lived in. They could have up to 3 of their children in. So they were living with the children in the program.
Yeah.
So it was also a motivation for them to do with their kids, because their kids are right there. It's a constant reminder, you know. But that's a story in itself. Because this was very much like that part in the Book of Judgment where it says how to do charity, about helping women and their children, and set up an organization. And that organization is still in operation. It's fantastic. It was a fantastic experience. I did it for 7 years, double and triple shift in the South Bronx with the gangs around and the whole stuff. So anyway, and I'm still here.
Still here. I said, you're still here. You're still working.
Yes. So we get to the chief now, the next one, Satan, our own Satan, which is the leader of the other 6, and is the desire for self-glorification and leadership to rule over others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one thing that struck me very deep in Oxford. If you seek leadership, you're selfish. If you deny it when it's offered, and this really hit me, you're selfish.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? It depends on the circumstance and your own personal motivation.
Yeah, and so all through Owaski, I mean, it talks about we may be gods, we're going to be gods, but that's a trap. I'm going to say from my own point, that's a trap. I want to be a servant. I want to be able to help people. I don't care if I'm a god, except a god in the sense of mastering my own crap.
Right. And all the true gods, first and foremost, they always proclaim themselves to be servants anyways. That's why the false gods don't really understand it.
Right. It's like, or they did until they become false,
Right.
But they didn't really get it deep down. And that's the thing. And it happened to me because when I was working in the Bronx, because I had a master's degree in social work and a undergraduate in social work, a BSW, and I was a recovering addict who was there. Anyway, the point is, I was pretty well trained, and they wanted to make me supervise the second in the senior counselor under the clinical director. And the first time, because I got to tell you, some of my coworkers were, oh man, some of these folks are crazier than the clients, kind of. I mean, they were very interesting people, and I turned it down. They offered to me twice, and then I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting in my office, and I'm just thinking, and all of a sudden, I hear this, or the silent voice, but it's like, do you remember? And just hearing that in my head, I went, oh.
Oops.
And day after that, they came again, or maybe 2 days after, again, my boss came, the big boss came and said, we really would want you to step up and, be the senior counselor. And I said, okay. Yeah, I surrendered to this, but no, that's just more work. Now I gotta track them. I gotta track all my staff. I gotta make notes on them and my clients. Oh, this is just wonderful. Promotion's a great thing.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I gotta stay late, or when no one shows up for work because they can't get to work or they're sick. Guess who's going to have to be staying on? Okay. But I love the job. I mean, man, if I could go back to that, I'll go back in a minute. I mean,
sounds like a really good job.
I mean,
I did a little bit of time in mental health, and it was my favorite medical job that I ever had.
Right. And a lot of the clients do needed mental health, and I, did psychiatric. So it was beautiful, man. But that's the whole story in itself. So here's Satan, and even Christianity, like our own Satan. Our own Satan is our own. I want to be the boss. I'm going to control. I know better than everybody else. I'm going to be a god. I'm going to be this and that, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bend for this person. I'm, blah blah blah.
But the thing is that strikes me with people that really focus on this God thing, being a God, even if that opportunity arises, is so temporary in the eternal spectrum of time. It's like not even, it's like a blip in the radar. It's not even like, why are we focused on that? The whole spectrum of growth, like you said, is all about serving. No matter what position you're in, the higher you go, the more you can reach down and serve. I mean, that's the whole point, is serving.
But the more work you get, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the more people. Like there were 30. To use the figures here for that job. I mean, it's hard enough being a parent, and it was hard enough being a single parent, in a divorce situation. So we worked together all the time. But just being a parent is being a god, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Or a devil, depending on how you parent. And this job I had, 39 women. Oh, that may not be so much. Now each one, and it didn't always have the same number, but let's say each mother had 3 kids in the program. Do you know how many people's lives you're responsible for then?
That's a lot. That's a lot. And the staff can be really hard to manage too.
Oh yeah, so then I become a boss, and I got them.
Yep.
I'm also, when I'm on duty, and let's say I'm in charge over other counselors, or just even the security guard, and that also means the safety of what we had. The grandmas in the kind of the older women in the neighborhood would do the child care when when the clients were doing the work during the day. So we had a child care staff to take care of the clients' children, all done in the facility, while they were going through the daily routine of meetings, of learning how to take care of them. I mean, whatever the program was, they had to learn during the day, including cleaning, cooking. Oh, that's part. Like we're talking about that vision with the ships and everybody working. If the cook didn't show up and you're on duty as a counselor, you, as the counselor, had to go with the women who helped the cook and cook.
Everyone did their part.
You know, or the cleaning thing. So it really was this egalitarian kind of thing. And in fact, one time there was this new worker, and you know, the big boss was saying, Naomi Race was saying, you know, well, we do this, and then and the person said, well, that's not in my job description, because it was, you know, coming in as a substance abuse counselor. And Naomi says, you want to work here? This is a community agency. You roll up your sleeves and you do what you need to be done. Do. And that was the whole thing. You got this job, but you're going to learn. You got to pitch in with people, and we had to pitch in also with them, just to teach them that they've got to pitch in with the kids and do things with their children.
Yep.
I mean, so you know. Anyway, it was so the Satan here, and I look at vanity and self-conceit as the handmaidens to our own Satan. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I would say of the Tetracts, the major triangle is conceit, self-conceit, the ego that way, because you can still be good and be stuck on yourself, and the Satan, what am I really doing this for?
Yeah. Well, it's that desire to be over people, to be better than, to have control over, to, you know, it can take several forms, but once you get to that point where you're really wanting to have power over people, you know, a lot of your other Tetracts are well established.
Now think about this, though. Now, there's the I want to be boss Satan and have people bow to me in the sense of a, you know, kingship kind of thing or queenship. But there's the other side, and a lot of people don't. It just struck me once, and it like really hit me. Someone, and I learned this about being handicapped. There's things you got to ask people for help, and there's a lot of stuff you can do for yourself. But a very, very a person who plays needy all the time is getting other people to serve their seeming inability to take care of themselves. Oh,
interesting. Yeah, that's true, huh?
Yeah, think about it. I mean, you work in nursing homes and mental. Did that, man?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't do this and that. You know, I mean, like that's what I tried when we were doing this technology thing. I mean, I could just say, no, I can't. No, I got to try it. I might feel really stupid about trying to figure out how to do it. But that I'm so needy, everybody works for it. And the less they do, the weaker they get. So the more people say, oh, I feel so bad for you. Let me do this for you.
Yep. I've definitely seen that through the years,
Now,
for sure.
having or being legally blind, and I've worked with blind people, and I lived when I came here in a home for the blind for a while, and I ended up being client, volunteer worker, and sometimes paid worker.
Yeah.
But and it was supposed to be independent living. The blind people that the parents were so loving, quote unquote, and so wanted to help, now trying to be independent, had been helped into helplessness.
Yep.
And the ones who were able to do for themselves, their parents made them do stuff or sent them to blind schools to learn how to be as independent as possible.
Yeah.
And that was a really good level. So the Satan thing, and most people, we just think it in the sense of glorification. But think about it. How many times people, we have a tendency to manipulate. If you can manipulate someone so you don't have to do it, and then you can play on your handicap, whatever it is, or whatever the thing is, the more they have to serve you.
Yep. Yeah, you're controlling them by your helplessness.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, it's in a way is a nasty example, but one of the things that Thomas Jefferson was against slavery, and it wasn't too much of the humanitarian thing, but it was that he was so worried that the children of these people would become so lazy and useless because they had their slaves and servants doing everything for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So that was one of his motivations?
Yeah, that was one of his was like he was really like worried it made them indolent. Or what did they make them? Worthless and inert.
Right.
And inert. I mean, they got dressed. They were dressed by their servants. And the kings like Louis XIV, they were dressed. The original court was held in his bedroom, dressing him. And those terms about when someone's on the has the badge of the bath, that literally meant because you were bathing the king.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. That seems a little awkward, but
yes,
it doesn't seem like
wait a minute. Then you got the person, and they fought for the position of the badge, and there's another term for it, but I'm just going to say the badge of the toilet. Well, you can figure out what that was. And these were the like ladies in waiting, the lower noble. This wasn't the servant class.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, it's totally outside of my reality.
So I mean, you get what I'm saying, but I think we've got a pretty good idea of the lower and the higher Satan. I'm so needy, and I can't do this, and would you do this, or would you call them for me, please?
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense, actually.
And I have to as a kid, a lot of times when I had a little job or didn't want to do something, I would con my mother to make the call and say I couldn't come in.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I mean, I understand the.
You're familiar with both sides of that equation.
Right, playing the handicap card,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we probably all have done it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. Being aware of the Tetracts, we have to be really aware of ourselves. And that's the part. There's one part in philosophy that says something to the effect: stretch your hand out and say that I'm going to overcome every thought, passion, whatever that is not leading me to spirituality. So at that point, we have to get engaged in the probably only aggressive thing we should really be engaged in, which is conquering our lower self.
Right. Yeah.
There's an old expression. It goes, uh, and I'm going to, because it's usually done in the mail, but a person who conquers a country is great, but a person who conquers themselves is greater still.
Mm-hmm.
So we,
Yeah.
in you could look at our Tetracts as part of our self-nation, of our person,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to get these these lazy folks or these hangers-on and these criminal elements of ourselves in check.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a work of a lifetime. We're trying
Yeah,
to battle
and more
ourselves.
than,
Is
David, it's more than a work of this lifetime.
Yeah.
That's the thing about, we. It, 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 I guess it will become Aisu because they went right to the third resurrection and they went up. But unless we're going to get to that magnificent state while we're in the flesh,
Yeah.
and we're not living in those communities, and we're living in us. Um,
It's going to take shedding our
well, take
body and then some
right.
to figure it
And
out.
if we think we're going necessarily to a high place in the second resurrection, we may be lucky just to get into the middle or the upper middle of the first.
I'll be thrilled just to be able to keep going up and not have
Yeah.
any. I mean, I'm excited to go to the different schools and start learning some real real skills like in the spiritual world. Oh man,
No, and that that was the other thing in OSB that really made sense to me. The idea in the old days of going to heaven and sitting on a cloud, uh, playing on a harp.
right.
What do you have an intellect for? Why did you give an intellect?
Yeah, eternity of doing nothing.
Right, and the distorted part of Buddhism after the real Buddha of nirvana. I'm just going to be sitting there in this state of bliss.
State of they I mean don't they describe it as the state of like nothingness or something? The
Yeah,
great nothingness?
mm,
Yeah.
that's kind of like that's like frontal lobotomy.
Right. Well, I'm
This
sure it's pretty peaceful because you're zoned out so much, but it's not
right,
very productive.
but the definition of nirvana in Owaski is real different. That's
Mm-hmm.
where you can see things, the past, present, and future, and you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go, in that, even in the better parts of the first resurrection, school, grammar school, 400 years, brother.
Right. That's all. I mean, for us, it's a long time, but spend 50 years doing one thing and then
Yeah.
practicing it, being an apprentice for another 20 years and going back to school for another 20 or 30 years. Like, man, that's not doing nothing. Like that's being active and learning
And,
and growing.
and not
That's
just that. Look, what struck me also, at least from my own thing, is that we prize philosophy and all these, learning how to think and so forth is definitely important because you need to learn, you need discernment, and this. But all philosophy, to me, what counts more, and that's why I say I couldn't live in the wilderness of this. I don't know how to build a house. It's building ship. Building a ship often became after being a doctor.
yeah.
So to be able to build and provide for
Mm-hmm.
in Paradise Lost, which I read a long time ago when I was in my first undergraduate when I was married, it describes the activities of Satan and Lucifer, all the different characters of the dark side, and other than when they were causing havoc to mortals. All they did, now check this out, they sat and philosophized all the wonders of the universe and contemplated philosophically all these different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that stayed in my mind because, and it even talks about that in the uh, the thing in the book of Sappho, I think it's in Sappho, of Phoenicia, where it's the travels of this Faithist in these different lands, and he came to a land of philosophers, and people could read palms, they did astrology, they did all the sciences, but they just sat there talking about themselves, and they didn't help anybody.
Right.
And that was kind of the thing they were painting about Lucifer. Now we talk, so it's great. We talk about, the spaceships. We talk about, and it's a goal, but it's also a way of not doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got to keep your eye on the real
Right.
goal is service.
Right. So that job I had in the Bronx it was hands-on. It was basically being a parent.
Yeah.
And I was teaching. I mean, I'm terrible at managing my own finances. I'm better now. And I'm sitting there because I know what you do, teaching these women how to handle their finances. Now, that's going to reflect on me saying, well, dude, you know it because you're teaching it. So don't you think you should be doing it?
Practice what you're preaching.
Yeah. So I started getting better at it because if you're going to tell people to do it, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, hey, listen, Peter, I'm gonna end this. We've been chatting for about an hour and a half. Next time we do this, let's pick it up from your time in the Bronx forward.
Right, and if we want, we can talk more about what you said about the restoration work, because this is really important kind of work. So,
okay, yes, I want to make a note of that because that's
so
really.
I'm sorry if I went off in that, but you mentioned the Tetracts, and it's something we really have to be aware of, and every day. Well, let's fill in what it says in Owaspit, to sit every day or even during the day and see if we're being true to that light. And I'm saying that because I know I got to do it, and I force myself, and that's important. Talking about it, but we have to take the time to really stop, look, and listen.
Meditate on it.
And evaluate where we're at that time.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's talk about the ministry that you brought up, and then any cool stories you have from after the Bronx for next time.
Okay, so shall we say like blessings, wisdom, love, and light to everybody, and just start looking, stop, look, and listen, and we've got to just start working ourselves and doing the best we can, and going to the Creator throughout the day, asking questions, just talking to the Creator.
Yep. All right, Brother Peter, I want to wish you much peace, light, and love in the Creator's name, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dave.
All right. Bye.
Bye.